warm welcome to this special edition. I have with me the chairman of SEBI, UK Sinha. Mr. Sinha, I'm delighted that you found the time, and I hope you're very comfortable because I have a long list of questions. So we might be here a couple of hours. I want to start with how regulation functions given the context of the environment. And I understand that it is meant to be steadfast, but I'm sure that the current political climate, the current economic environment, all of them have an impact on you, on your team, on any regulator in the world. Can you tell me what this impact has been over the last few years, or the year and a half that you have taken over at least?
Broadly, I would say the role into three parts. They can be broken into three parts. One is the policy making. Policy making, in my humble judgment, remains the prerogative of the government and the parliament. They do consult the regulators like they consult other experts, but the final decision is to be taken by those who have been running the parliament, who have the voice in the parliament. Once that part is done, the second question is to draw out various regulations and implementation part of that. Drawing the regulation, my position and understanding is that this is the job of a professional organization which is doing a technical job, and in our case, for example, SEBI. So when we are drawing a regulation based on a policy given by the parliament or by the government, that should remain entirely the domain of the regulator, and nobody outside the system, once the policy has been enunciated, should interfere in this area. And the third area is the implementation, the enforcement of the actions. Those enforcement actions should depend entirely or remain entirely with the regulator.
Have they remained with the regulator, or in the recent past, would you say that there has been political interference in both the way policies are crafted and the way the regulator does its job?
So far as SEBI is concerned, it will be right for me to talk only about SEBI.
I'm talking about SEBI and your 1.5 years that you
Okay, so in that context, I don't think there have been any major legislations in this period. So the policies which have been there from the past, so far as the laws are concerned, they have remained there. What has happened that the country has passed through certain major changes in its economic environment in the last 1.5 years. For example, the money which is being raised from the primary market, that has undergone a change. The whole atmosphere about how much money is being raised through the mutual fund route, that has undergone a change. So as a regulator, we also have to start looking at our activities, keeping into mind the broader objectives. And the broader objectives are, for example, in our case, to ensure that the corporates or entrepreneurs in the country are able to raise money very efficiently. The broader objectives are that the retail should be able to participate in this area. Keeping all that in mind, we may decide inside SEBI to give focus on certain activities and to keep certain activities for a time when the situation improves.
But that's your prerogative and SEBI's prerogative.
Correct.
My question is on political interference. The perception has been that in the last few years, the political interference has increased. And therefore, the question I'm asking you is, has that been the case? Is that your experience in the last 1.5 years? How would you characterize the political dispensation towards SEBI in your period here?
Oh, in my period, the type of decisions which SEBI have taken, the number of decisions which they have taken are unprecedented. The number of decisions which we have taken, and none of these decisions have been influenced by anybody who is not legitimately authorized to take that decision. And to answer your question directly, there are certain decisions within SEBI which can be taken at my level or even at the level of my younger colleagues. But there are certain decisions which have to be taken at the level of the SEBI board. SEBI board has representations from the government. SEBI board has representations from the Reserve Bank of India. SEBI board has also got 2 outside members. So to the extent they are members of my board and their approval is required, each and every member of the SEBI board contributes towards that.
And the government is represented on your board.
Yeah, and I will not like to think that as an interference. It's a legitimate scheme of the parliament, law passed by the parliament.
So at no point do you believe that your independence has been hampered by the political motivations of the parties in power or the government in power or the individuals that currently run the ministries that SEBI may have to report to some extent?
Not at all, but I would like you and the rest of the country to judge it rather than my saying it myself. I would like you to look at our track record, what we have done in the last 1.5 years, and then come to a conclusion. We do not allow people to interfere in our working. In fact, our colleagues who have some delegated authority, they are able to take their decisions on their own. And that is why you will, for example, see that even in cases where certain amount of irregularities have happened 1 week back, and we have been able to take an action. We have been able to take action in GDR cases. We have been able to take action in some cases recently. Last week, we took action within a week of something happening. Can you imagine this happening when you are dependent upon certain signals coming from outside the system?
Okay, if I may candidly ask you, and I know you don't answer company-specific questions, so I'm not taking any names, but there have been certain positions of SEBI that have been reversed in the recent past, and that has added to the perception that is there political interference. And therefore, I so candidly put the question to you directly that have you experienced political interference? Not inputs from your board members, which is all very valid and that's fair. That's why you have a board and it's legitimate. But political interference, as we all understand the phrase commonly used, has that been your experience?
Not at all. Again, you are referring to certain matters about which it is not proper for me to talk to.
So therefore, I didn't take any names.
Media.
Yeah,
but
that's right.
I would encourage you to get into the merits of those cases and the facts of the cases and the series of judicial pronouncements which have come in those cases. If you combine these three things, maybe you will come to the right conclusion.
The other reason why I chose to ask you this question is connected to another question that I've been wanting to ask you for several months now. In a recent public speech, you were fairly critical of what is now commonly referred to as the government's policy paralysis. And you touched upon several policies that have been pending for a long time, but there has been no action, be it insurance or pension reform or, FDI sectoral caps in several sectors. And it was interesting, if I may use the word, to see you take that very strong position, because you often take a conciliatory view. So I was curious to know what has prompted Mr. Sinha to take such a strong position on matters that are not even directly within SEBI's jurisdiction. And I wondered whether it was an outcome of political interference.
No, not at all, not at all.
So what prompted you to take that position? It's
very easy to answer that it's not an outcome of any political interference. It's as a part of our normal working, we have to meet foreign institutional investors or even other potential investors, and we are asked a number of questions about what is happening in the country on the economic front, and as a part of our normal duty, we have to tell them and educate them about the developments in the country. Some of the feedbacks which we were getting were consistent about certain decisions which were being taken by the larger political system. And the background in which I made that statement was, I would say, more constructive rather than a critical one, in the sense that I highlighted the need to act on those issues. Because it's part of my job as chairman of SEBI to inform the government about what feedback we are getting from foreign institutional investors.
Sure, I understand that. But let me quote to you what you said in that speech. Okay. And this is the strength and the intensity and passion with which you were speaking. I am quite bewildered that if an agreement has been signed between a raw material supplier and a utility company, and both the sides are government-owned companies, but year after year that is not getting honored. I'm referring to the coal and power sector. I won't go on because that will take up too much time. But it just seemed to me that the regulator sounds exhausted. Maybe I'm not using the right word, but exhausted or tired or at pains with the lack of action, or maybe even fatigued by the way this government has been behaving.
Let me explain the background and the whole context. One of the greatest strengths of India is that India is a country where rule of law prevails. India is a country where there is an independent judiciary. India is a country where contracts can be enforced. And if you look at some of the other countries, I would not like to name them, but there are countries which are perhaps growing very fast, which are perhaps attracting more investments. All the investors that we meet from outside India, they have serious concerns about that country. Whereas, so far as India is concerned, these are given things. So if somebody has signed a contract and that contract is not being honored, it is important for us as a nation to restore that confidence. That is the main point.
So what you're telling me is it's not political interference that provoked an otherwise very mild-mannered Mr. Sinha that we have known over several years to make these strong comments against the government.
I don't know why you were saying strong comments.
The cumulative impact of your speech is interesting. I should tell you that. We were all watching and wondering, but what prompted Mr. Sinha to do this?
Number one, you see, there is nothing in that which government is not aware of. Nothing in that which has not been articulated by others.
And yet you chose to articulate
but in a background where the whole context had to be given, while the positives were also highlighted here, which we are not talking at this stage, but if there are concerns emerging, it's my duty also to highlight them.
Okay. To move on, and government or political interference can sometimes be by pushing a certain kind of action and sometimes be by not taking any action at all. And what I'm referring to is you have 2 vacant positions now in the senior most level at SEBI. What has stopped the filling of those 2 positions? Or is it down now to 1?
That only the government can provide the answer. But so far as we are concerned, I would like to assure you that in spite of 2 positions being vacant, no work is getting stalled. Only thing is we have to work extra. But we are trying to ensure that none of the tasks given to us are getting compromised.
It's not my case that they're getting compromised at all, sir. I'm just saying, look at, a government can either force a regulator to do something it likes or hurt a regulator by not giving it optimum capacity.
I don't think you are
And I'm a
right.
little worried that, for these positions have been vacant for a long time now and there has been absolutely no progress. I mean, whilst talking about vacant positions, I'll even point out that your erstwhile employer, UTIMF, and an entity that it comes under your jurisdiction at SEBI, has been headless since you left it in February 2011. Now, to me, that is one way of looking at government interference. I'm wondering if you look at it that way as well.
You are mixing too many things. Let me clarify the position. Government also has its limitations. Government has to follow a procedure, and nowadays, unless everything is followed to the last T, there can be problems. So my feeling is that government is very sensitive that all the rules, regulations are very thoroughly followed, and because each and every decision of the government is questioned. So if there has been a delay, the delay should not have happened. Government should have anticipated that such positions take about 3 months or 6 months or 9 months, whatever, and then fill it up during that time frame. But to say that government is deliberately not filling up those posts so that SEBI is incapacitated, I think it's not a very charitable
I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that. If I've said that, then I'll take that back. What I'm trying to say is that you're giving the government a very long rope, Mr. Sinha. They have not filled 2 positions, and they're 2 very important positions in your organization. They have not filled the position of UTI, MF head for the last. Now there is this acting CEO, but it's acting. This is the 3rd largest mutual fund in the country.
Again, let me correct you.
This government interference can be either do this, or government interference can be we will not do this.
I must correct you that I have nothing to do with the day-to-day running of UTI today. I used to work there earlier. But your impression that government has to fill up this post of the CEO of UTI is not correct.
Something is stuck somewhere, and it's stuck between, I will not take names because again if I take names then you will not like it. So, but it's stuck between the government and a shareholder and some variety of issues, right?
It is for the shareholders and the board of the company to take a call.
The shareholders have been pushing, some of them, but for whatever reason there has been no decision for a year and a half. So that's a long road you are giving the government.
You may be knowing something which I am not aware of, but it is for the shareholders and the board of directors of the company. So far as SEBI is concerned, since UTI is an entity regulated by SEBI.
Are you not concerned that it doesn't have a proper CEO?
That is the point I was going to address. Since it is a regulated entity of SEBI, SEBI provided that unless and until a CEO is appointed, no new scheme will be sanctioned.
Now there is an acting CEO.
And now they have appointed an acting CEO.
So acting CEO is equal to CEO?
Only then we have allowed for some of the fixed maturity plans to be sanctioned. So we have put pressure, and we have been talking to the management of or the shareholders of UTI that they should fill up the position quickly. But again
talking to as a gentle advisory or talking to as a promised regulatory action if you don't toe the line?
Wait a minute. let us not be hostile to the government. Let us understand facts. As a regulator, our job is to ensure that the unit holders' money is protected. You should find out, and I am happy to report it from the point of view of SEBI, that even in this period, there has not been any violation inside UTI. While I don't say that a CEO is required, CEO is required, but SEBI has been extra careful to ensure that the shareholders' interests, unit holders' interests are protected.
Do you have any idea from the government on when they will fill those 2 vacant positions?
My impression is that the matters are in a very advanced stage, and one position might be filled up maybe within the next 7 days.